Well, hello and welcome to another episode of The Unlicensed Counselor. My name is Steve Moak. I am The Unlicensed Counselor, and as always, so grateful to be here in studio with our friends as well on this beautiful, steamy, hot Scottsdale, Arizona day. Hey, I am fired up. We've had some guests in studio the last 2 weeks. It's good to just be back in the chair myself. Looking forward to having a conversation on a topic that honestly, it took me a couple days this week to kind of, as I wrap one show and kind of start thinking about next week's show, I try and get to the topic pretty soon so I can do a lot of show prep. And I really kind of wrestled with the topic, and as this one kind of came to me, and it sounds kind of weird, but I've been wrestling this idea with closure. And I had some closure happen in my own personal life this week, and I said, when it hit me, I was like, that's it. That's the show this week. So I know we recently did an episode on letting go, and I want to talk about the difference between letting go and what closure is. And I can tell you personally some of the benefits that I've had around closure in my own life as well, too. So this is one that kind of hits near and dear. And as usual, this show, I like to talk about things that are going on in my own life and kind of bring it back to you, the listener, and see how these things all tie together. So excited to get into that today. But before we do that, I want to start by saying thank you to our continued sponsors. First, our friends over at BetterDrugTest.com. Look, you've heard me talk about drug and alcohol testing, how important it is for prevention and detection. If you need an at-home drug or alcohol screen, go to BetterDrugTest.com. They are the industry leader. This is what some of the leading outpatient and treatment centers in the U.S. send their clients home with because they know they can trust these results. So go to BetterDrugTest.com. And again, thank you for them for continuing to sponsor our show. Next, I always like to talk about the nonprofit work that I do for youth drug abuse prevention. Our organization is called Hard Stop, but go to the stopstartshere.org. Go right now, parents, I'm talking to you. School year just started. We have a parents prevention playbook that I co-authored that is all about how to keep your son or daughter from ever starting to use drugs. That is the only way that I've seen be 100% effective in never having an addict as a son or daughter in your life. Go to the stopstartshere.org. And again, new sponsor alert. This is a fun business that I'm actually a part of, and I'm excited to kind of bring to your eyes and ears. The company is called Buzzbin Media. That's BUZBIN media.com. This is trash can advertising. You heard me right, trash can advertising, where they pay you, the resident, $5 a bin, so $10 a month is getting Venmo directly to your account for allowing them to put stickers with ads on your trash cans. It's really that simple. Go to buzzbinmedia.com. It's free to sign up, cancel anytime. They send out the decals directly to your front door. Pretty straightforward and easy. So go ahead and sign up at buzzbinmedia.com. Last but not least, I always like to plug myself. Give me a follow on some of the usual social media channels at The Unlicensed Counselor. We're posting a lot. Everything is now on YouTube officially as well, too, so you can find clips from the show in case you don't have the 30, 40 minutes in your day to listen. You can find all the clips that are posted directly to YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, all that good stuff. So, okay, so, we did an episode on letting go, and letting go, the difference in letting go and kind of closure is letting go is kind of releasing that attachment. So it's kind of accepting it. It's kind of moving forward, even if maybe you don't agree with the outcome or you never really found that resolution. In my own personal life, I've been involved in startups for probably a decade now, and I was a founder, CEO of a startup that was actually a drug testing business that recently got acquired. And it was a great experience in retrospect, but I went out, I raised money, friends and family got involved, my family put in a lot of money into this deal, and we grew the business successfully. And then some things started happening with the lab that we were using, and they hit some financial stress that was impacting our, it was really complicated stuff. And when you get investors and friends and family involved in these things, the pressure kind of adds and kind of compounds. And I'm the CEO and the founder, and I'm running this thing, and I've got a board I'm responsible to, and revenue numbers and sales numbers and all these different things. And I will say it in the end it wasn't going great, right? Some of it my fault, some of it external factors as well, but it was a really challenging time. And now that we have recently sold that business off, that has now been sold off to another entity. And there was an email that went out to the friends and family and investors, this is what sparked my whole idea into this kind of closure topic this week. I finally feel like we have some closure around this last, call it 10 years of my life. And it has been so tough. I mean, the financial liabilities that we have that we're paying back to investors and things like that, but equally as much, and I'm not negating the money side of this thing, was just the damage that it did kind of within the family, and my family specifically as well too. My father and I were co-founders in this business. I ran the business. It was really challenging. And when things started to get a little bit sideways and you got friends and family and lots of, dollars at stake, it got really challenging. And I would say we probably both didn't handle it all that well. So this week, now that we've actually officially closed and sold off that business, there was an email that went out that was actually nice, in terms of what happened and how we're kind of putting this thing to bed. But for the first time, and I'd say probably 10 years, is the first time I felt closure on this topic. Like, it has just been sitting out there and we've been bickering back and forth to the tune of, I was about ready to, just walk away from the relationship with my father and just say, I'm done in terms of communication and things like that, which would be tragic. I've got a 4-year-old daughter. I want them to be a part of all of our family and all the fun stuff that we get to do. But it was to that point where it was just like, this is too much, and we were just not seeing eye to eye. But I think for the first time, there was almost a sense of relief. And it was much different than this kind of letting go thing. I talked about, when I was married and got divorced, and I was able to kind of let go of these things. Things weren't resolved, though, right? Things were still just kind of left, but I just accepted that's what it was. And I was okay with that. In this instance, I feel like I actually found some closure. And that's really what sparked this feelings. And that's why I was like, okay, let's talk about what closure is and why it's so important. But it really was, I feel like we finally found that resolution. The business got sold off. We've closed the chapter on what that is. I've processed the emotions. He's processed the emotions. We're having that final conversation that is really putting this thing to bed. And to me, that has been the greatest sense of relief, because it's just been this dark cloud, right, that's kind of hovered over us. There were some high points, don't get me wrong, and I learned a tremendous amount. And, I love being involved in startups, and that's what I'm passionate about doing now. But the difference between just letting something go and now finally understanding why something is done and kind of closing that book, so to speak, and being done with it, that was really profound for me. And that was something that hit me this week. And I said, okay, let's run with this. So let's talk about why I feel closure is so important. And I think the number one thing that I had is it's allowed for emotional healing. So this is, when it ends, I understand why it's ended. I don't have any lingering questions. I don't have any unresolved feelings about this. That has allowed me to start to kind of heal. Now that it is done, it is communicated out. There is no more that is left to really say on this. It's allowing me the opportunity. And again, I'm just now, in my business example, I'm just now starting to kind of turn the page on that emotional healing, because this has all just happened in the last few weeks. And I'm starting to feel that sense of relief. I understand what happened. I understand what he did, what I did, where we were probably both wrong and what we could have been done better. But I understand it now. And now I feel like, okay, maybe we can have that relationship again. Maybe we can start to be a father and son again. Maybe we can start to be friends again, and we don't have all of these things. Now, this is me. I can't speak to what's happening on his side, but hopefully there's some emotional healing happening on that side as well, too. And because these are two people that were very close that just took, this changed the dynamic of our entire relationship dramatically, right? Dramatically. So the next thing I had on why closure is so important is kind of the mental clarity that it provides me. So I know the reasons why this happened. I understand the factors that led into all of this. I don't have any confusion anymore as to kind of what was going on. And the mental stress from all of this, again, that's been impacting both of us, is now starting to settle down. So I'm able to see things with more clarity. We've taken some of the emotion out of this thing because it's done. Like, things are done. The business is now gone. It is now in someone else's hands. We've sold that off, and that is done. So I feel like we're both able to sit down, and I shouldn't speak for him, but I know that I can sit down from a place and feel very confident and clear and a lot more calm. Like every time we would engage in a topic around this, I just find that emotions would jump out, right? And we would end up kind of right at each other's throat. And it was just a very sensitive subject. Now understand, I put, almost a decade of my life into something that you think is going to make millions of dollars, and it does well, but then it kind of takes a turn. And, so I was very heated and passionate about this, and he put a significant amount of money into this deal. And so he's very heated and passionate about that, as he should be, and the investors that he helped bring into this deal as well, too. But now that this thing has settled down, now we're able to kind of sit down as human beings again. That emotion is kind of giving way to clarity, and I think that we're going to be able to really start to do the emotional healing and kind of speak from a different place than we haven't been able to do for the last couple years. And this leads to my next point, which is really the reduced resentment, right? So it's helped me pull out the anger, right? Now that this thing, the email is sent, the business is closed, I'm getting away from that anger. I'm getting away from that resentment. I'm understanding their perspective a little bit better because, again, as I was just saying, the emotions that were attached to this weren't letting me see very clearly, what was going on from his side of the table. Those negative emotions were definitely affecting our relationship, and I couldn't see through it. I was too deep into this, and now I think this resentment is starting to settle. It's not done, but I know I can already feel it just kind of taking down. And if it was a 10, now it's at a 6. And I think by next week it'll be at a 4. And then the week after it'll be at a 2. And now, again, that's going to give way to hopefully kind of closing that chapter and starting a friendship, father-son thing again as well, too, which I'm looking forward to, and I would assume he is as well, too, because that's been the dynamic of our relationship forever. But, there's a lot of lessons learned, and we can probably do another episode just on family business, and I can give you lessons learned from there, too. A lot of pros, a lot of cons, a lot of things I would do differently, but we'll save that for another time. So next up on my list is personal growth. So again, reasons why important is closure. So I feel like we all understand what went wrong, right? I analyzed what went wrong. I've learned the lessons from this. I think he's learned the lessons from this. Now I'm able to kind of see the personal growth. I was frustrated. My ego was hurt. Things didn't go as well as I'd hoped to. But I found myself, I was stuck. I was stuck in regret. I was stuck in anger. I was stuck in frustration. And now I feel like I'm ready to kind of take those lessons learned and now move forward. I think that there's a real opportunity for personal growth. I've already been on that personal growth path, but I think this finality of the closure that's finally happening is kind of giving me new life of, okay, accept it. That is done. That is done. It is public knowledge now that business is, gone. Let's move forward. And there's just something about that there's no gray area anymore that I think is really helping push me forward into this new kind of personal growth mentality. Now, the next thing on my list was, this idea of preventing repetition, of just jumping into something again and having the ability to, make all the same mistakes over again. Getting closure on these past experiences has really helped me recognize and change some of the behaviors and hopefully preventing some of the same mistakes from happening again. I was on the phone with a fraternity brother of mine last night, and we were talking about other ventures and things like that, and a founder that we were working with, and it was like he gets really hot and maybe lashes out a little bit more than we should. And it was funny, we're 45 years old now, and this gentleman is a little bit younger, and we both said, yeah, I think we used to do that too, right? I think we used to kind of respond and react and feel like you had to control everything. I don't know if it was the ego. It just felt like you had to do that when you're a young CEO and kind of establish yourself. And it was like, yeah. And now we're 45 plus, we've had good careers, but, still trying to hit that home run. It's like, yeah, we just don't operate like that anymore. And I think that's that learning curve in preventing doing that same type of behavior because we just found it to be unsuccessful, right? So it was just little insights from that. But this idea of closure, I think was really good. And honestly, it was an email going out. It was like a tangible thing that got sent out to everybody, investors and friends and family. It was like, okay, the business is sold, and it's done. Everybody knew this was kind of happening and it was on its way, but it's like the finality of that and the actual physical act of like, okay, now we're done. And to me, weight lifted, stress isn't gone, but it's just, as I said, it's just kind of slowly dropping. So, next thing I wanted to hit on this closure topic is how to get closure. So let's say you've had a tough situation. Maybe it's a breakup, a divorce, a job loss, a business venture gone south, million different scenarios that are out there that are just tough situations that we all run into on a regular basis. So how can you get closure after a tough situation? Let's dig into how that is. And the first thing on my list is be sure to acknowledge your feelings, right? Whether that's journalism, that's a good word, Steve, journaling, whatever it is, accept the fact that you've got a lot of feelings wrapped up in this, and you've got to be able to stare those in the face and accept that, okay, I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm mad, I'm all these things all at the same time. It's okay. It's okay. Take a breath. You're going to be okay, but it's okay to have all of those things. You just went through a really tough stretch. Maybe it's the hardest thing you've ever gone through in your life. Take a breath. Acknowledge that you're probably going through a little bit, right? Let's just start there. Number 2 on the list, seek some understanding, right? If you went through a breakup, maybe have a conversation with your ex around their perspective, and maybe that can give you some answers that you're looking for. Conversations with exes are tough, but maybe it can help give you the closure that you're looking for. And maybe if you even frame it that way, that he or she would be open to helping you do that. Understand, though, that some of these things that you may hear could be difficult, right? Especially if you're in the X. So you've got to be able to hear those things and try not to be defensive and jump and want to butt into that conversation. Let that person share so that you can really seek that understanding. And again, the goal is to find some closure, not just letting it go, all right? Number 3 on my list is be able to forgive yourself and forgive some others. It's a great way to find closure as well, too. Forgiveness is an underrated skill, and I think it's one that doesn't get talked enough out on podcasts. In fact, I probably need to make a mental note of forgiveness being such an important thing, more for myself than for forgiving the person. When I have found that I have and I'm not saying I need to verbally forgive them, but maybe on my own, I'm like, I'm forgiving you. I find that I behave differently. I find that I soften a little bit, and that's as a guy who's kind of been a hard ass, a lot of his life, like I find that when I just kind of mentally forgive someone, and verbally might even be better, but sometimes that's hard for me. But if I can just say, I understand where they came from, I don't blame you, I forgive you, it changes things, right? It changes things, and it kind of helps get that burden, that guilt, that anger off of me. And I find that to be really beneficial. Next up, and I say this phrase all the time on the Unlicensed Counselor. Again, you know me, I'm a person in long-term recovery from drug and alcohol addiction. Acceptance is the answer. And in this case, accept the unchangeable, right? Accept that you lost that loved one. Accept that that business venture is gone. Accept that you didn't get that position. Accept the thing that you're never going to be able to change. And that situation is what it is. And the sooner you start thinking like this, the faster you're going to be able to start moving forward through this, right? That's going to get you closer to that closure. And that closure, again, is where this relief that I'm telling you that I felt over the last week, because things are over. I've accepted that. It is what it is now. Now it's time to move on, right? So accept the unchangeable. I think it's okay, too. This next thing I had on my list is to engage in some type of ritual. Do you need to send a letter? Do you need to write a letter and burn it? They do this in rehab and treatment centers all the time. If you got all these different things from your past that are kind of haunting you and you can't let go, you literally write them out, go over to the bonfire, torch the thing, and it's very symbolic or emblematic of kind of releasing these things out into the wild. Find something that is ritual for you. Tear up a piece of paper, make a video, delete it. Do whatever you need to do to kind of help get that closure. And again, make it a thing, a tangible thing. I do like the idea that it's a tangible thing. Like the email that I was talking about that got sent, it's like, it's done. That is communicated out. The send button was hit. You know, there's no more worrying about what could be, it's done. All right? That is the finality that really has helped me. All right? 2 more things on my how to get closure after a tough situation list is really set some boundaries, right? So, you know, now we don't want to repeat these same type of things over and over again. So if we can find a way to set some boundaries to not let those things creep back into your life, I think it's a really healthy thing to do. You know, I'll talk to my dad and be like, look, what happened. I'm okay to discuss these things, but I'd rather not get into the weeds on this. You know, I want our relationship to kind of be more father-son friends going forward. You know, when we're out playing golf or on a family trip, maybe let's not bring up, you know, what happened in XYZ specific example that in the business venture that we did together, right? Let's set some boundaries so that we can kind of keep the sanity and keep that closure closed. I think that's a really beneficial tool that you can probably take as part of this as well, too. And then last but not least, you know, let's start focusing on the future. Something bad just happened. A tough situation just happened. Your ego's hit. And maybe your pocketbook's hit. Maybe your marriage isn't there anymore. You lost a job. Let's take a look in the rear view, but let's start looking forward as well, too. Let's start focusing on what's coming down the pipe. Let's set some new goals, right? Let's start to think about how to shift your energy from what has been kind of a drain to maybe something that can feed this going forward. And I think the less that you're looking in the rearview mirror and the more you start focusing your energy forward, you're going to find that closure and getting on with this is really going to start to propel you forward. And look, there are a lot of benefits to this. You know, if you can start to find this closure that I'm talking about, you're going to get some emotional freedom. You're going to have increased mental clarity. You're going to have less stress and anxiety. By the way, you're going to improve your relationships. I'm looking forward in my example to having kind of reverting back to a father-son relationship than kind of this adversarial, you know, co-founder stress that we'd had for almost a decade. That I'm not going to say we wasted a decade of, you know, being a father and son together, but it was borderline. Like we were just going at each other for so long, and it just deteriorated so poorly that we were almost to the point of not talking. So I'm looking forward to the improved relationships now that we have this closure. You know, I think the self-esteem is going to start to go back up. Now, fortunately, I'm not one that kind of, you know, leans on the depression side or gets sad or stuck or, you know, any of that type of thing. But it does take a hit to your ego when a venture that you have all this time, effort, and money in doesn't work out the way that you think it's going to work out to the degree that you hoped out. So I think a little self-esteem and kind of rebuilding of that is, and I'm looking forward to that because it's been challenging when you're very public about these things too. And, you know, people know. And that's just part of it. That's the pros and the cons. So I'm just looking forward to kind of slowly rebuilding that. I think there's more personal growth and development that's going to come. I think I'm going to have better decision making going forward as well too, now that I've got this closure and I don't have this huge weight hanging off the back of me. It's like, that's still lingering back there. There's outstanding this, X, Y, and Z. Now that's all been put to bed. I also think that from this closure and from this whole journey, the resilience that I have built up personally and that you can build up, because it is hard to go through things like this. The resilience that will come from this will only help me in the future, and I am looking forward to that. But most importantly, I'm just looking for peace in mind going forward. And I think that's one of the greatest benefits of this as well, too. You know, if you can finally find some of that closure, I'm looking for more peace in my life. And I think that now, book is closed, new chapter, new life. It is what it is. I've accepted what's happened. Now I have some peace of mind. Let's start looking forward. And I'm really looking forward to what the future can and will look like. So, look, I know there was a lot of information to kind of throw at you in a short period of time, but, you know, there's a difference between letting go and closure. And if you can't, if letting go hasn't worked, let's see if we can find some closure for you. Because I can speak from personal experience that this feeling of closure has really helped open new doors, kind of give me a new pep in the step. And I'm looking forward to what this can do going forward. So, I don't know if it's a topic that gets discussed a lot kind of out in the world. So if you have any questions, do a quick Google search or send this episode to somebody and have a conversation around it. But I think closure really is an important thing that maybe more of us could find instead of letting these things drag out infinity and kind of keeping that weight on your back. So hope you got a lot of benefit from this episode. If you think somebody could use some closure as well too, go ahead and send this episode to them as well. We appreciate all the support when you do that as well too. My name is Steve Moak. I am the Unlicensed Counselor. Until next time, thank you very much.